Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on how to recover from a layoff. We are happy to have you here if this is your first time or second or third, or you've been to many other webinars. We always appreciate you taking some time to spend with us. As we get started, feel free to let us know where you're joining from. That's one of our favorite things to do and to read about where you're coming in from. And also it gives you the opportunity to get familiar with Big Marker, where the chat area is, and also take note of the Q&A area, because after today's presentation, we will have a live Q&A with a career expert. So we are here to answer any questions that you have about this topic. A couple things to note as we go forward. We are recording our session today, and we will be sending you a link to the recording and any resources that were used in the presentation within the next few days. You'll get that to the email address you used to register for the webinar. At the end of the presentation, as I mentioned, we do have a Q&A. Please put those questions in the Q&A section of Big Marker. That's where we will prioritize those questions by how popular they are or how many upvotes or thumbs up that they get, because we do try to answer, we will answer as many questions as we can with the time that we have today, but we might not get to all of them. This webinar has been pre-recorded. But again, we will be sending the full recording with the Q&A. So if you don't want to spend the time taking a ton of notes, that's totally fine. You'll have this to be able to play back very shortly. All right. So the topics that we're going to talk about today regarding a layoff are how to make a structured recovery plan, how to fill the gap on your resume, and what you can do to address the layoff in your cover letter and interviews. And as I mentioned, an audience question and answer session at the end. Before we get into the topic of layoffs today, I think it's important to go over some of the trends that we have been seeing in remote and flexible jobs, since 2020, really the start of the pandemic. So the last 3 years have changed the course of remote work for the long term and really how we conduct our daily work. However, in the midst of all that is happening or has happened, the good news is that we're seeing and have continued to see that remote opportunities are steadily rising. They've steadily risen each year since 2020. And we're also continuing to see increases in the number of remote and hybrid job postings. And a hybrid job is a job that allows for some remote work time and then some time in the office. Here are some of the statistics that we are seeing. Number one, when we looked at from January to December 2022 compared to the same time period in 2021, we saw a 52% increase in hybrid jobs. And during that same time period, we saw 20% more remote jobs on the FlexJobs site as well. So of course, we're gathering data for 2023, and we'll be able to compare that to next year or to 2022, once this year rounds out. One of the other things that I think is important, particularly when we're talking about a layoff, is that according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, their latest job report says that it's about 19 weeks on average, an average time to find a job, or the average time that somebody is unemployed. And that is close to 5 months. We typically say at FlexJobs to find a job, an average time is 3 to 6 months. And that is certainly right within that range, but getting closer to the higher end of that range. Before the pandemic started, just under 5% of U.S. employees worked from home full time. And of course, in June of 2022, 80% of U.S. employees work from home, either in a hybrid or completely remote model. In that survey done by Gallup, it was found that 5 in 10 workers are working hybrid. 3 in 10 are working remotely, and then 2 in 10 are exclusively working on site. So 80% have some form of remote work. we do expect, and surveys have shown this, that some of this remote work is going to level off from, 80%, such a high percentage, but still remain far, far above 4.9%, which was pre-pandemic at about 28%. It'll probably level off in the next couple of years. We also have seen a significant increase in people searching for remote jobs. Remote opportunities are growing, which is great, and so is the competition. These types of jobs, remote and hybrid, are attracting 7 times more applicants than in-person roles. But if you are here and learning about your situation in terms of a layoff and wondering how to present yourself, you're putting yourself one step ahead from those people who don't take the time to do that. So welcome here, and let's go ahead and talk about some of the fields for remote work. If you're looking for remote and flexible jobs and you've been laid off, here are the top career fields for flexible jobs. We know that most professionals are looking for some form of work flexibility in the form of remote and hybrid work. So because of that, this is what I wanted to show you. You can see that fields like computer and IT, marketing, accounting and finance, project management, medical and health, HR and recruiting, and customer service are the fields where we saw the most growth in remote jobs last year. Other fields that have fast growing opportunities that might have some more hybrid and do have fully remote opportunities, but you might see some in-office opportunities there too. Accounting, HR and recruiting. Some of these are the same as the top remote fields, and the fastest growing fields like medical health, project management, and interestingly, nonprofit jobs, communication, and legal jobs had a significant increase in job postings last year. Now, there's a wide variety of jobs and career fields associated with remote work. There are also many different companies, large and small, that offer these types of work options. I wanted to share this slide because one of the things that is important to do, as we talked about, a job search can take 3 to 6 months, and it can get pretty daunting to read job posting after job posting and apply to jobs and do it that way all of the time. One of the things that you can do is really reverse engineer your job search, so to speak, and focus on companies you would like to work for and check out the openings that they have. So if you are interested in working as you're looking for a new job in a remote capacity, here are the top 30 companies on the slide that had the most remote opportunities last year. And you can get this list and others on our site, of course. So I encourage you to look into that as well. You can see that there are a lot of different industries here. There's CVS Health, United Health Group, BCD Travel, Robert Half International, GitHub. So there's a wide range of industries represented in this company list. All right. So let's just talk about the aftermath of, what happens after you are laid off. It's important to take a moment, and I'll just kind of maybe throw it out there. If you want to answer something in the chat, feel free, but don't feel like you have to. Why do you think it's important to take a moment before jumping into a job search when you've been laid off? And feel free to put some information in the chat if you like. But basically, a layoff to a job really occurs due to circumstances that are outside of your control. It's usually because something has happened to the business. Maybe there's been a reorganization or an acquisition and they need to get costs under control. That, unfortunately, means laying people off to save money. If you need to get a job ASAP after a layoff, stop for a moment. Make sure you address how you feel about your current situation so you can get past it and move forward with an effective job search, because the attitude going into the job search will carry into your applications and your interviews, and you really want to take some time to process the situation. Addressing your feelings. Sometimes that's hard, but it's really, it's totally and completely normal to feel upset or angry about a layoff. You've just lost your job. You haven't done anything wrong, right? And you are now laid off. You may have been doing everything right and been a high performer and still were laid off. And it's unfortunate no matter how you look at it. A job loss is a loss, so it is normal to grieve and process emotions like anger, resentment, anxiety, or any number of other feelings. And that's okay. Give yourself permission, time, and space to feel whatever you need to feel and grieve your job loss so you can move on. Not letting your emotions get the better of you and negatively affecting your job search going forward. That's what you're trying to do here. If you don't do this, you might say things you don't mean, which could jeopardize, the good reference you want for the next job, or these feelings can come out during an interview when most of us are nervous and anxious already. If your former employer gives you access to counselors and career professionals, make sure that you use them as part of the layoff, package. Talking with a trained unemployment counselor can have a positive impact on all the negative feelings you're experiencing, and they can point you to really helpful resources. This will make you a more effective job seeker as you move forward. All right, so we've taken some time to process and you've taken care of your emotions and immediate, financial belt tightening and recuperation. This is a great time to evaluate your specific situation. That doesn't necessarily mean taking the next job that comes your way for all of us. So by creating a plan that helps you move forward and includes taking time for self-reflection and learning, you can try to avoid the impulse of applying to anything and everything. Of course, in any job search, a thoughtful action plan for the long term is really going to help you survive your layoff in a meaningful way. All right, so here are some key steps to bouncing back. And after you are laid off, you might decide that you want to stay in the same career or career field, and you might decide you want to change. If you want to stay in your industry, it's important that you understand why you were laid off. So was it because of, the industry and a struggle with the industry? Was it because your education or experience was holding you back? And maybe if that's the case, now might be a great time to go back to school and gain some additional training, upskilling, or certifications. If your whole industry is undergoing a massive change, training might help you out, but it also might be time to consider a career change if this is something that might be a constriction in your industry for a while. This might be a good time to go back to school, to switch careers, or look for a more flexible work arrangement. And processing this and thinking through these things will help you get ready to start your job search. And then what you're going to want to do is set weekly goals for the process. And then finally, you want to practice talking about your situation. And it's whether you are in an interview or on your cover letter, eventually you're going to have to talk about the fact that you've been laid off. And while explaining a layoff should be easy because it was no fault of your own, you want to make sure that you choose the right words and phrases when you talk about it. Practicing and enlisting the help of friends and family members, or maybe even a fellow coworker that was laid off as well, you can run some of your verbiage by. And we'll go into a bit more detail on this in a few slides. So evaluation and reflection, let's go a little bit more into this because I really want you to spend some time assessing what you want in a new position. This is where the true soul searching comes into play and will set you up for a more productive search. And also potentially a more rewarding career and future. So here's what you want to think about. Think about values. What drives you? What things are important to you? And what do you absolutely stand against? People are much more likely to be satisfied with their careers if they closely align with their values. So with a layoff, as hard as it is, it does give you the opportunity to really explore these things and find something that is aligned with who you are. You want to also reflect on what you enjoyed or liked most about your most recent role. What did you look forward to doing? And what experiences do you want to avoid? Then think about your skill set and the skills that you used, those that you were good at in your most recent job, and the skills that you consistently get recognized or complimented on. And if you are always asked to do a specific thing or things, regardless of your job title, what is that? Because that might be an indication of a direction to go, because that is work that potentially feels effortless to you and comes really naturally. And when you are out of work and when you are in work, we've got these personalities, and people tend to choose occupations that are consistent with their personality. So what type of work energizes you? What types of people do you like to work with or be around in your free time? Another question that you might consider is, what is it that you like about them? And answering these questions can reveal some aspects of your personality and who you are inside and outside of work. You want to really think about a differentiator and things that make you unique as compared to other people, and what your value proposition would be to a new organization. So talk to people, ask people who know you well. Find out what makes you a valuable employee. You want to answer this yourself, but also talking to other people can be really beneficial. FlexJobs also has a 4-step system that we've created for choosing a new career that you can follow. This really allows you to spend a good bit of time. It takes about 2 hours or so, and it is important to do that because it is going to walk you through an evaluation and reflection process. Because in most cases, you've been working in your career for some time, and the next thing that you're going to do will also be a long-term thing, right? So you really want it to be something that's a good fit, something you enjoy, something you are good at, and certainly it aligns with your values and brings you energy. Another resource that is helpful is Career One Stop's Employment Recovery Portal. This can help you in finding your direction too. Both of these resources are going to be included in the recap that we send. All right. So if you decide to change careers or that you need additional training, start looking into where and how to do that. Will you be attending online classes or on-site classes if you're going back to school or getting a certification? If you search for volunteer activities that will help you stay active and help you build your skills, you can use a site called volunteermatch.org. That allows you to select virtual opportunities, even that can be a great way for you to enhance and hone your skills as you're going through this process and provide you with needed experience, particularly if you're going through a career change. You want to answer and know if you'll need any specific certifications or if upskilling is enough, and you can use different tutorials or videos to do that. You have to put a plan together on what steps you will need to take to do these things. And will you need to do, or is it something that you can explore doing an adult internship or returnship that aligns with your goals? In terms of goal setting, now this is really important. You have to set some goals to keep yourself on track, just like when you start an exercise program or nutrition program or anything like that. You need to be able to hold yourself accountable, and you can find an accountability partner too, but this is going to vary on your specific situation. So you have to put an individual spin to this, but starting with goal setting for the first 30 days, maybe like you will update your resume and clean up your social media accounts, start positioning yourself for the job that you would like to do on LinkedIn. 90% of employers are going to compare the resume that you send them to your LinkedIn profile if you have one. And there is a 71% greater chance of being interviewed if you have a link to your complete LinkedIn profile on your resume. So LinkedIn can really make a difference in the job search. All right, so we might have some 30-day goals, and then another part of a good job search plan may involve a combination of reaching out to your current professional network. You can do this on LinkedIn or locally, make new network contacts, and also searching for open jobs. Your goal doesn't have to be just submitting job applications. In fact, you want to have a multi-pronged approach to your job search. So try to find a balance so your job search isn't so overwhelming. So a balance of activities, applying, networking, things like that. Create those weekly goals, such as sending out 4 tailored applications, reaching out to 2 people on LinkedIn, meeting with an accountability partner who can help you stay motivated and disciplined in this search. And maybe you decide to attend a career-related event like this, a webinar, or a virtual job fair that other organizations have. You can find events like that as well. You might decide to join some groups on LinkedIn too. There's a number of different things that you can do, but if you break it down into smaller chunks, it will be much more manageable. We do have a link included in the resources that includes an interactive job action plan worksheet and a job search tracking sheet. So you might find that those are helpful as well, and you can use those as you move forward. Once you've found some companies and jobs of interest and you've done your evaluation and you know what direction you want to go, now it's time to position yourself in the best possible light when you apply. Many people in the job search market are really concerned about employment gaps, and sometimes a layoff, it can lead to a gap in employment. Typically, an employment gap is defined as being unemployed for 3 months or more. And having a gap like this isn't negative, but knowing how to navigate the situation can really alleviate any potential anxiety that you may be feeling. And also it can share with an employer, the reasoning, a brief reason why there is a gap. That a gap is common, particularly since 2020. Most people have some gap in their resume, so you are in good company. But let's talk about how addressing a career gap on your documents, like your resume, if you've been unemployed for more than 3 months. We know from a study that found that applicants who provided a reason for their employment gap on their resume and or in their cover letter receive 60% more interviews than those who don't give a reason at all. And since you don't know which of those employers you're applying to, it's better to be safe than sorry. Plus, when you are putting a career gap on your resume and explaining it, you are maintaining control over your career story rather than giving a hiring manager or somebody reading your information the opportunity to fill in the blanks themselves and wonder and make assumptions about why you took a break. Your resume gaps tell your story. Employers want to know what you've been doing during this time. Like, have you been taking online courses? Are you doing remote learning, working on certifications, or relocating, or you did relocate? Thanks to the pandemic, this really is one of the top interview questions you can expect, since that happened, because so many people now, since that time, have gaps and have been laid off. So it's something that you do want to get comfortable talking about, but first you're going to add it to your resume. Now, while you're looking for a job and discovering what you want to do next, consider filling this time with freelance or contract work if that works for your industry. We talked a little bit about volunteering as well. If you work part-time and it's not related to the jobs that you are applying to, you could include a brief bullet about this part-time work in a career break section as well. Take ownership of your story so employers don't do it for you. This is also going to help you doing this on your resume, think about how you want to position yourself in your cover letter. And if you want to mention it in your cover letter, but also a brief explanation during an interview. All right, so this slide provides some examples on how you might do this. You might say planned career break, and then talk about what you were doing during this break. These give examples of completing coursework or an intentional pause to focus on full-time caregiving. In the experience section where it says career break halfway down, the first bullet says one of multiple people laid off due to a change in company strategy. So that's all you have to say about the layoff. One quick sentence, and then follow that up with another bullet or two about what you've been doing or that you were consistently praised and promoted for the work that you did at the organization. All right, we have one other slide here with some examples as well. Another planned career break, or 3 other planned career breaks. You also could say the bottom one says professionally active career break. So you could put that bullet about being laid off, and then say we took the opportunity to relocate and get settled in our new community. We utilize effective skills to do X, Y, and Z. So you don't have to go into a ton of detail, but you do want to give a little bit of information. All right, so let's talk about cover letters and interviews. And you may decide to talk about this in your cover letter. You might decide to only include it on your resume, and that's fine too. But keep in mind, you want to keep it short, simple, and positive. Your mindset really can make all the difference in how this affects you and your chances of landing a new role. So keep in mind that having a positive, forward-thinking attitude about your job search will help you make continuous progress toward finding and securing your next position. Simply explain in one sentence what you were doing during the break. No matter the reason, whether it's a layoff or something else, think about the accomplishments and career highlights you do have so that you can leverage that in about 3 to 4 sentences in your cover letter with things like how you've made the most of your time, why you're interested in this new field if it's new, all the research and planning and preparation that you've done. Include specific information that leads up to your best selling points for the specific position you are applying for, including a bit of information about why you like them. Essentially, it's why do you want this job at this company? Employers want to see a vested interest. All right. So interviewing, number 1, I guess it's actually the starred, the starred takeaway here is practice, practice, practice. If you've written your cover letter and you've chosen to put something about your break in your cover letter, that's great. You also put some of your accomplishments there, and you've certainly got those on your resume. So this can help you in your interview responses. You want to practice, prepare the answers and practice them out loud with a family member or friend. And tone really goes a long way in an interview. So if you appear upbeat and positive about your career trajectory and are looking at your career break, your layoff as an opportunity to have done some things you maybe wouldn't have otherwise been able to, which allows you to explain the gap in employment in a positive way, employers will be much more confident in your ability to do well in this new role. So here are some examples of how to keep your response short, simple, and positive during an interview. My most recent employer implemented layoffs as a result of the global pandemic, including my position. I was consistently recognized for my outstanding performance and teamwork, and I plan on delivering that same quality of work and collaboration in my next position. Or you could start that answer instead by saying my position was eliminated due to a corporate restructuring. I was consistently recognized for my outstanding performance and teamwork, and go on. Another way you could start is the company was acquired and duplicate positions like mine were eliminated, or maybe it's my position was one of several reduced because of a change in strategy. So those are some things that you could say in an interview or can kick off an answer to the question like, why did you leave your last job? Or what have you been doing over the last several months that you haven't been working? You can talk about that in the interview. All right, so here's what we want to think about doing next and how you move forward from here. First and foremost, after a layoff, it's important to acknowledge your feelings, reflect and evaluate on the achievements and accomplishments you had at that role and previously. Think about what you want to do next. And really, if you can, take some time and look at where do I want to go next? Use it as an opportunity to make the right move, and what things you can do or need to do to be competitive to do that. Then you want to set goals. Weekly goals are great, monthly and weekly. I would set monthly goals and then backtrack to do weekly goals. Address the break in your unemployment, and of course, practice any answers to any interview questions. All right, speaking of questions, as promised, we will have those questions shortly. What we're going to do beforehand is I just want to remind you, we'll be sending you this recording and resources. If you have any other questions or you want to check out the companies, go to the FlexJobs.com blog, and you will find a wealth of information on the site that will allow you to get those questions answered. And all that to say, let's go ahead and see what questions we have.
All right, everyone, we are going to move into the Q&A portion of our webinar today. Before we dive into your questions, could someone let me know in the chat section if you're able to hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So my name is Keith Spencer, and I am one of our career experts here at FlexJobs, and I will be answering your questions. Just as a reminder, put those in the Q&A section, and if you see a question you want to hear the answer to, feel free to click that thumbs up button. So our first question here is asking about layoffs and the WIOA government program to help you get a bit more competitive in the workforce. They're asking, is it suggested to do WIOA grant, or is there a better way to gain more experience in the professional world with little experience? So for anyone who is not familiar, WIOA is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and it is a federal law. However, the programs and the grants and the funds that are used from this federal law are all administered at state and local levels. So that means the services that they could potentially provide or the programs that they could potentially provide you are going to vary state to state, as are eligibility requirements. So my recommendation would be to, first kind of conduct some research into, what your state or local workforce development board is. For example, in Pennsylvania, where I live, all WIOA grants and WIOA funds are managed through PA CareerLink is the name of the Workforce Development Board, or the organization that's run by the Workforce Development Board. But WIOA grants can, depending on your eligibility, provide you things like, vocational training, some support in getting education or, skill development programs. They might provide things like career counseling or job search assistance, maybe helping you with like resume writing and interview coaching, things like that. They can connect you to, supportive services. So, there's a wealth of different things that WIOA grants can provide you. And in terms of trying to decide, is it worthwhile to pursue, WIOA grant based on your eligibility, or try to find a different way to gain some experience in the professional world? I would say, depending on the state and what they offer, it doesn't have to be an either or situation. You could be doing your own kind of concentrated job search efforts on the side, and also trying to pursue different programs and services through WIOA if you are eligible. So, it wouldn't hurt to figure out what your workforce development board is, reach out to them, see if you might qualify, see what you might qualify for. If any of it sounds appealing to you and you think it could be beneficial for you, I don't think there are a lot of drawbacks to pursuing that, but then you could also at the same time be pursuing your own job search efforts, like I mentioned. So trying to gain some experience through job search efforts, trying to gain some, experience and education to maybe train training, through a WIOA grant, you could try to do both. I don't think that you need to limit yourself to one or the other if you are eligible for WIOA services, excuse me. Hopefully that answers your question. I hope that was helpful for you, but very good question, and thank you for asking that. Okay, so our next question here, the person's asking, what if you were terminated but under complicated circumstances? Essentially, it was poor handling of a situation by a manager. How would you address this, if at all? So, yeah, if you are terminated in this type of a situation, maybe or maybe something happened where you weren't able to perform up to expectations. It was more of your quality of work or something like that. You could phrase that on your resume. Like, you don't have to necessarily give all of the details, especially if you're worried about how they could reflect upon you on your resume or in an interview. So you could phrase it more of something along the lines of, laid off due to a change in company strategy, and that change in their strategy was that they just decided that they wanted someone different in that role. So you could be a little bit more vague there. You don't necessarily have to give all those details. Now, you could run into situations potentially where, they request to contact your previous employer, and they might do some digging and they might find out a specific reason for your layoff. That doesn't always happen, but there is that possibility. So, you always want to make sure that you're not lying or being dishonest, but being a bit more vague like that, it's not going to necessarily hurt you. You could say, if you wanted to provide a bit more detail, just try to find a way to kind of tactfully address that. You could say, I encountered a situation where, my supervisor and I, we just had really sort of different views on how this situation should be handled, and I was sort of uh, it's hard to phrase this off the top of my head, but you could say that you based on your work values and your ethical code, you wanted to do it a certain way, and your supervisor wanted you to do it a different way, and you weren't willing to compromise, and that unfortunately led to you being terminated. So really just trying to phrase it in a way that's a bit more diplomatic. You never want to speak negatively on your past employer, because that could kind of reflect poorly on you, but you also don't want to give details in a way that is going to reflect negatively on you just based on the way you're telling the story. So, trying to find a way to either be vague or share details in a tactful way is kind of the approach that you want to go. For me personally, I would probably go with that first option, being a bit more vague, just saying that I was laid off due to a change in company strategy. So, good question there. I know that's a hard situation to manage, and I hope that answer was helpful for you. Okay, next question here. This person is asking, how do you pivot into another industry but performing the same role, more so knowing the competitive marketplace? So, little bit of what I kind of said in that first question. It doesn't necessarily need to be an either or. You could say, let's use an example. So, like a customer or a client retention specialist is a good example, because those types of roles are needed across a wide variety of industries. So let's say that you were a retention specialist in the healthcare sector, and now you're looking to get into the tech world or something like that. If you are feeling sort of the financial pressure of a layoff, and you're at the point where it's like, okay, I just really need a job, it doesn't necessarily need to be the right one for the long term, then you could, kind of explore your options across a lot of different industries. If healthcare is where you got your experience, that could be easier for you to get a retention specialist role back in that same field. Now, on the flip side, and also apply outside to other industries as well. But if on the flip side, if you're in a pretty secure place financially, you're not too worried, at least for the next couple of months, about your financial situation, then you could devote a bit more time and effort to trying to pivot to this more preferable industry that you may have in mind. Now, to make that pivot, think about you're trying to do the same role. So you know the essentials of the role itself. You know what the role entails. You know the transferable skills that you need to do that role. You know the technical skills that you need to do that role. So you have kind of the main components. What you're probably missing at this point is the industry specific knowledge. So in that case, if I were in this situation, what I would do is I would do a lot of independent research. I would maybe leverage some AI tools like ChatGPT or Google Bard to help kickstart this research. But I would want to find out as much as I possibly could about this industry I'm trying to pivot to, as well as what the people in this role I'm trying to get do in this industry, because there are probably some nuances in those roles specifically. Even though it's the same role, there's probably some nuances in those roles from industry to industry. So I would really want to do that research. I would also, the second thing that I would do is I would try to do some networking. So I would probably hop on LinkedIn. I would find, some companies or organizations within this new industry that I'm trying to pivot into, and I would see if I could locate individuals that were doing this role. So, I use retention specialists as an example. So I would look for retention specialists in my new industry of choice, and then I would try reaching out to them, and I would try to say, hey, I see you've been working in this industry for a while. I'm a retention specialist myself, but I've been in healthcare. I would love to ask you some questions about what it's like to work in tech. Just going back to the parameters I set with that example. That is another good way to learn more about that field, make some potential connections with folks who are in that field, and get some of that kind of insider knowledge that can help you smooth out that transition or that pivot to that new industry. So hopefully that was helpful for you, but those are my main pieces of advice were I in that similar situation. But very good question, and thank you for asking. Okay, so another good question here. So this person is asking, what proves more favorable, cover letters or letters of recommendation? So that's a good question. It is going to vary a little bit based on the company to which you are applying. In my experience, letters of recommendation are not asked for as frequently during the application process as cover letters. In fact, most employers aren't going to necessarily ask for a letter of recommendation. What they're going to do is they're going to ask you to list your references, meaning the names of 3 to 5 people with their current title, their relationship to you, and their contact information. And then they will contact them directly. So in my mind, if I was going to say which one's more important, cover letter or letter of recommendation, I'm going with cover letter, because the cover letter is a good opportunity beyond your resume, which you also want to tailor to specific jobs, to really, really emphasize the specific needs of your particular audience, meaning the recruiter or hiring manager for that individual role, and then to kind of tell the story and paint the picture of how your experience and accomplishments will allow you to, successfully meet their needs and bring a positive impact to their organization. So cover letters in my mind are going to be more important than that letter of recommendation. Letter of recommendation can be important, especially if it's requested in the application, but I would focus more of my efforts on making sure that I am writing high quality cover letters that are tailored to each position to which I'm applying for with each application. So hopefully that answers your question and was helpful for you, but thank you for asking that question. Okay, so another good question here. This person is asking, is listing a career break really necessary? If the employer is interested in your profile, wouldn't they just ask? So this is a really good question. You would think that the employer would, see your career break, kind of just assume something went on, there that led you to potentially not be working during that time, that they would, look at your other experience and decide on your candidacy based on that experience, not just your career break. The problem is, and this is totally unfair in my mind is that a lot of people in the professional world have sort of unfair biases against folks who have career breaks. Because of that, I always recommend proactively addressing your career break in, one of the ways that was recommended in this presentation. I think that taking the time to proactively, explain and address your career break on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, just taking the chance to discuss it in an interview, all of those things will speak positively about you. Whereas if you leave it unexplained, they might imagine some red flags that don't actually exist. So, by addressing it proactively, you are kind of countering those potential biases that could crop up. So, that's always the advice that I give folks that are dealing with career breaks or employment gaps is to go ahead and address it proactively. And, again, it's not fair that employers might have those biases because, especially with the pandemic, tons of us have experienced career breaks or at least were maybe furloughed for a time or things like that. So career breaks, layoffs, being out of work, employment gaps, like that's perfectly natural and not something to be ashamed of. So that's also part of my motivation for encouraging folks to address it proactively. Kind of own your break, show that you are not ashamed of it, because you shouldn't be. If you did any like volunteering or took courses, like put that in your career break. Show that you weren't just watching your favorite TV show all day long. You were trying to stay professionally active. You were researching and identifying top remote organizations. You were taking workshops like this one. You were going to webinars to try to brush up on new and existing skills. All of those things I think can be beneficial, and you can do those by leveraging your career break effectively. So good question. Really appreciate you asking that, and hopefully that was helpful. Okay, so we're a minute over time, but I do want to try to squeeze in one more question here. Let's see. So this person is asking, they are concerned about their age. They've been in the same industry for over 20 years. Currently, that industry is not very stable, and this is their third layoff. Would it be beneficial for them to pursue a new career since they are an older individual? So kind of going back a little bit to an earlier question when that person was talking about or asking about trying to get kind of the same role in a different industry. I don't know specifically what your role is that you've been doing, or what your industry is here in this question, but you could have a diversified approach. So a couple things I want to mention here. So in terms of concerns about your age, yes, ageism is a real thing. It is illegal for employers to discriminate based on age, but also sometimes that discrimination comes through in sort of unconscious ways, or unconscious bias is what it's called. So you might be discriminated against based on age in a way that isn't necessarily provable. Again, doesn't make it okay. It's a horrible thing, but there are some things that you can do to try to counteract or avoid potential issues related to ageism. So first and foremost, in your resume, in your professional experience section, I always recommend only going back 10 to 15 years in that professional experience section. Helps you avoid potential issues related to ageism, but also too, employers want to see your most recent and relevant work. So you want to showcase that more prominently. Use your real estate on your resume to the best of your ability. So only go back about 10 to 15 years. That being said, if you have some earlier roles that are highly relevant to a job that you want to apply for, you can create an additional related experience section below your professional experience section where you list, one or two earlier roles. Don't go overboard with it. One or two earlier roles with maybe two or three bullet points, just describing the most relevant and essential elements of those earlier roles. So that can help you avoid some issues related to ageism. But then also too, when talking about ageism, I always tell job seekers, think about the stereotypes, right? So like, what are the negative stereotypes that someone might have about folks who are, a little bit more advanced in their career? And then what are some of the the positive stereotypes that folks might place on people who are a bit more like fresh out of schooling. So counteract proactively the negative stereotypes, and then demonstrate that you possess the qualities of those positive stereotypes. So that can be a pretty good way to help kind of avoid that issue related to ageism. But getting back to the rest of your question about, should you pursue a career in a different industry, or try to stay in your current industry, knowing that it's not very stable? You could try to do both. You could have, if you're sticking with the same role but trying to change industries, that's a little bit easier. If you're trying to change your type of role and your type of industry, that's a little bit more challenging. But focus on finding roles that look appealing to you, and where you match at least 60 to 70% of what they're looking for in that job description. You don't need to solely apply for things where you match 100% of what's listed in the job description. You want to kind of keep that 60% rule in mind, so that you have greater options available to you. And then also, I typically recommend this, and I honestly, I do this myself. I have several master resumes that are 5, 6, 7 pages long. They kind of describe everything that I've done in all my past jobs, but they also have different focuses to them. So, for example, I started my career as a teacher. So I have one resume that is kind of specifically focused on, excuse me, teaching, training, and instruction. I've also spent a lot of my career in career development related roles. So I have another master resume that has more of an emphasis on career development related, responsibilities and skills and accomplishments. And then I've also done some jobs that have a large element of like community engagement and volunteer management. So I have another master resume that speaks to that. So if you're looking across different industries, across different roles, maybe create yourself some master resumes, and then when you find jobs that you want to apply for, think about, okay, which of my master resumes is going to be the best fit for this type of job? Make a copy of it, rename it first name, last name, resume for company name, and then start pulling out things that aren't going to be quite as relevant until you can get it down to 2 pages, and then kind of heavily tailor that professional experience, or excuse me, professional summary and key skills section at the top of your resume. So that could help you a little bit with trying to make that pivot potentially to a different industry, to a different role. But also make sure you're doing your research, like I mentioned earlier. Look at job descriptions, see what it takes to be in those roles. Think about what transferable skills you already possess, what technical skills you already possess that are valued in that sort of field, and then try to really kind of leverage those as your bridge to a new field or a new industry. But again, you can also keep looking in your current industry, especially if you're feeling some of that financial pressure. So, lot to go over there with that question. Couple different main topics that I wanted to address. So I do apologize that we've gone about 7 minutes over our allotted time here, but that was a really good question, and I appreciate you asking that. Really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. I hope that the information provided in the presentation and that the Q&A has been helpful for you. Again, really appreciate you taking the time. Definitely encourage you to join us for future webinars as well. And I wish you all the best of luck in your job search. Take care.